Hi everyone, welcome back to A Gentleman's Life. Sam here again, and I just wanted to make this video response to a recent video by Stuart Lomas. He had a really instant video on his channel about a week and a half ago discussing um, and asking the question essentially um, when does a watch and how does a watch become so much more than just a watch? And I thought I would just give my take on that in response to his video on the topic. And I'll start with I'm relatively new to watch collecting. I've been collecting for about 2 years, and I've cycled through a few things that I figured out my tastes and learned to stomach pricier watches, if you will, or pricey for me at this point. Um, and I don't have any heirloom watches or watches from grandparents, parents, and that sort of thing. Um, my dad hadn't worn a watch in years until I bought him a watch for himself for Christmas this past year, and he got back to wearing one again. Um, so mine's a bit different in that regard, but I still think I have an interesting perspective on this topic. Um, and I'll start by giving kind of my examples of what I already own that I think will become more than just watches to me, and a couple watches on of the ones that I want to own that are on my list that I think will also fit this role. So first, the ones I do own, the first was my first Grail watch I purchased, which is the Tudor Pelagus, and that's the Pelagus. I have it on the rubber right now, but just to give you a glimpse, this was my first Grail watch, if I'll use the term. The first one I really felt like I had to reach and save for, and I just couldn't get out of my mind. I love its really tool nature. It's anti-bling or lack of flashiness, if you will, and it just really appealed to me. And that will lead into how I'll use it, which is why I think that applies in this situation. And the other, it's another dive watch actually, and this is one of the Bond Seamasters. It is the last wave dial Seamaster, and it's the one that Daniel Craig used in his first Bond movie, and it is the coaxial Omega Seamaster. Oop, you get some computer screen glare there. Can't get rid of that. Give me just a second. I'll get rid of that computer screen. Here we go. So you can see. Oh no, that's the other computer screen. My apologies. That's actually the phone screen. But that is my Seamaster, and that's a watch I've wanted for a long time, and finally ended up purchasing. Used a couple years old. So I think these two are watches that for me will fill this role in a few years. A couple other ones I think will fit this role for me. I have on my list a vintage Rolex Submariner. Specifically, it's the reference 5513 that was made from the mid 60s through the mid 80s. I specifically like the late 60s variants, the matte dial, preferably meters first. But for me, the 5513 is just the quintessential Rolex Submariner. It is the best version that was ever created, and then I also really like the newer version of the GMT Master, the blue black. So I'll go into why I think these for me fulfill great examples of watches that will cease to be just watches. And for me, it's all about the history of watches, whether it comes from a previous owner, family history, or personal history. For me, the Seamaster is a great example. I wear this watch a lot. I love my Seamaster. It fits so well. Its style I really like. It's the quintessential for me dressy diver. Exactly what I want out of a dressier styled diver. But by wearing it a lot, I start to build a history with this watch, and that's building a history through moments in life, and that ties it into emotions. and day-to-day use. And that's something that maybe your kids remember you used to wear that all the time, and then you pass it on to them, and then they build more history with it. A great example for that one too is my other one I have right now, the Pelagus. So for this one, for me, because of its tool nature and the fact that I'm in the military, I find that this is something I can wear a lot. And even though it's an expensive watch, I don't mind wearing it a lot because it's meant to be worn and used. And that for me means it's going to take that beating and have those stories to tell years down the road. Like a couple vintage watches I have right now. I have a old 70s Seiko Diver that it tells a story. You can see the marks on it and the wear, and it tells a story about the watch. Now, one I can really think about is the Rolex GMT Master, the blue black. That being in the military, I spend lots of time away from home. That's something I'd love to get when I get married. I'd love to get the GMT Master, wear it for a wedding, and that's something you'd wear. Have to go to another continent for 6 months or a year, spend that time away. You're wearing that GMT Master in those moments where you're communicating back home with family, with your wife and kids, and it gives you that emotional connection. And I think that is also a good example of what I'm thinking in my head of when does something become more than just a watch, because it needs more. And that's really, I think, the key thing I keep hitting on. I've noticed with all of my examples and all the different watches I want to own that I can think of, that the ones that I think can hit that role are all ones where I see that through their use and through wearing them, you start building this emotional connection to moments throughout your life, these experiences you've had with the watches, whether it's 6 months deployed on a different continent from your family, and you have your GMT that keeps you connected time-wise for when you're talking to them and when you're trying to communicate with your family, or whether it's a big, easy to read, clean tool watch like the Tudor Pelagus that I wear it during the day and set it on the next to the bed at night, and it glows all night, and I can just roll over, and I'm exhausted, but I've got that almost like a mini clock sitting next to me at the same time. And you go through hardships not just by yourself, but with the watch and the people around you. And I think it's those experiences and connections and the emotion that comes with it that is truly what makes a watch more than a watch. And whether that's the connection you have to your father who wore the watch before you, whether it's the connection that you have with the watch, or it's the connection that your kid has with you wearing the watch, I think the key there is the emotional connection and the life experiences you had with the watch. And without those, you won't have a watch that is more than a watch. It will only be a watch until you have those experiences and build those connections. I will say I don't think you'll normally have that very often with just a standard, normal watch. To me, at least personally, I relate it to more grail watches that I've lusted after and wanted for long periods of time and had to save for. So when I get them, not only is it really rewarding and I love having them, but I follow that with wearing it and building those connections. But in the end, it really is about the experiences and connections. And now that I'm starting to ramble, I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit, Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed my take on what makes a watch more than just a watch. Until next time.